Captain Jack Reynolds stared into his coffee cup, watching the steam rise in lazy spirals in the crisp Colorado morning air. Peterson Space Force Base was quiet at 500, just the way he liked it. The early shift at the Space Domain Awareness Operations Center, SDOC, usually meant peaceful monitoring of orbital traffic and space debris. Usually. The first blip appeared on his quantum radar display without warning. Then another, and another. Within 30 seconds, his previously clean screen lit up like a Christmas tree with dozens of objects materializing just beyond lunar orbit. "Well," he muttered, taking a long sip of coffee, "this is definitely above my pay grade." His fingers flew across the haptic interface, sending automatic alerts to NORAD, the Joint Chiefs, and every major military command center on Earth. To his surprise, the system responded with a single word: STANDBY. The objects, massive ships that dwarfed anything humanity had put in space, moved with impossible precision, arranging themselves in a perfect geometric formation that would have made Euclid weep. Their hulls gleamed with an iridescent material that seemed to bend light itself. Reynolds' secure quantum comm crackled to life. "Captain, maintain your post. First contact protocols are in effect. Do not, repeat, do not initiate any defensive measures." "Copy that," he responded, watching as one of the smaller vessels, still larger than an aircraft carrier, broke formation and descended toward the base, though someone might want to tell them they're violating restricted airspace. The alien ship settled onto the parade ground with all the drama of a commuter flight landing at Denver International. As Reynolds watched through the control center's windows, a delegation of Earth's highest-ranking military officers was already assembling on the tarmac. Someone had clearly known this was coming. The ship's hull rippled, and a doorway simply appeared, as if the metal had decided to rearrange its molecular structure. A tall, aristocratic figure emerged, flanked by what were obviously guards. Their armor seemed to flow like liquid mercury, and their weapons, if that's what they were, pulsed with an inner light that made Reynolds' eyes water. Ambassador Cathrix of the Galactic Empire stood nearly 8 feet tall, with silvery skin that reflected the morning sun like polished chrome. When he spoke, his universal translator rendered his words in perfect English, though the condescension in his tone needed no translation. "We have come to elevate humanity into the greater galactic community," Cathrix announced to the assembled brass. "Your species has shown remarkable progress for primitives. We will guide you in proper military conduct, as your current methods are." He paused, searching for the right word. "Quaint." Dr. Amanda Miller stepped forward from the group of military leaders. As Earth's leading expert in theoretical space combat and a former Air Force colonel herself, she had earned the right to speak bluntly. "With respect, Ambassador, we'd be interested in understanding the basis for your assessment of our military capabilities." Cathrix gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the air. It showed various human military engagements throughout history, from ancient battles to modern conflicts. "Your tactics are chaotic, unpredictable. You lack the proper appreciation for mathematical precision in warfare. Observe." The hologram shifted to show an Imperial fleet executing a series of maneuvers. Every ship moved in perfect synchronization, like a ballet choreographed by a supercomputer. Dr. Miller studied the display intently, then smiled. "Fascinating. Your ships maintain exactly 47.3 degrees of separation during that pincer movement. Textbook perfect. Which also means if someone were to disrupt just one ship's trajectory by about 5 degrees. She sketched a quick calculation on her tablet. The entire formation would become a very expensive demolition derby. The ambassador's chromatic skin darkened slightly. The alien equivalent of a flush. "You presume much. Primitive. Perhaps a demonstration is in order. We propose a series of military exercises to show you proper combat doctrine." Reynolds, watching from his post, couldn't help but notice how many of Earth's military leaders were suppressing grins. Humanity was about to get a lesson in warfare from the galaxy's most advanced civilization. This was going to be interesting. Major Mike Mad Dog Davidson leaned back in his chair at the United Earth Defense Council chamber, his scared fingers drumming an irregular beat on the polished mahogany table. 20 years as a Navy SEAL had taught him to spot ambushes, and this whole tutorial reeked of one. The difference was, this time, the ambushers had no idea they were walking into their own trap. "Let me get this straight," he drawled, interrupting Ambassador Cathrix's lengthy discourse on proper military etiquette. "You folks want to teach us how to fight, by having us participate in war games against your forces." The ambassador's metallic skin rippled with what might have been amusement. "Precisely, Major. Your species shows potential, but your methods are unrefined. These exercises will demonstrate the superiority of proper military doctrine." Davidson exchanged glances with Colonel Emily Iron Lady Thompson across the table. In her 30 years of service, Thompson had written half the books on modern asymmetric warfare that were required reading at West Point. Right now, her poker face would have won her millions in Vegas. "And these exercises?" Thompson asked, her voice neutral. "They'll cover all aspects of military engagement. Space, ground, cyber operations." "Naturally," Cathrix replied. "Though I doubt your cyber capabilities will be relevant against our quantum-encrypted networks." Davidson caught Thompson's microscopic wink. They both knew that Senior Chief Lisa Chen from Naval Intelligence had already cracked the Empire's unbreakable encryption during the first contact meeting. The aliens were still using Base 2 quantum computing. Humanity had moved to Base 3 5 years ago. "We accept," General Marcus Hayes announced from the head of the table. "With one condition. We choose the terrain for the ground exercises." Thrix's skin flashed with bands of color, apparently their version of a dismissive shrug. "As you wish. Though I fail to see how terrain could possibly matter against our gravitic propulsion systems." After the ambassador left, Thompson activated the room's quantum privacy field. The assembled human leaders finally let their grins show. "All right, people," she announced, pulling up a holographic display. "Operation Teaching Moment is a go. Mike, I want you to assemble your team. Pick our best, the ones who think outside the box. Way outside." Davidson cracked his knuckles. "Already got a list. Remember that Force Recon Sergeant who reprogrammed a cleaning bot to do recon during the Lagos peacekeeping mission? And that Space Force Lieutenant who pulled off the Ceres drift maneuver that everybody said was impossible. Get them," Thompson ordered. "All of them. The crazier their solutions, the better. The Empire wants to teach us proper warfare. Let's show them why humanity's military history is a masterclass in improvisation." The next few hours were a blur of secure quantum calls and classified file transfers. Davidson's office wall became a gallery of Earth's most unconventional warriors. Senior Chief Marcus MacGyver Rodriguez, famous for turning 3 rubber bands and a coffee maker into a working radar jammer. Captain Sarah Glitch O'Connor, who once hacked a hostile AI using nothing but a game console and spare parts. "Sir," his AI assistant chimed, "Imperial observers have arrived to begin preliminary assessments of Earth's military capabilities." Davidson watched through his window as a group of alien officers toured the base. They passed by the demonstration areas, carefully prepared spaces showing exactly what Earth wanted them to see. Old tanks, conventional aircraft. Nothing about the quantum torpedoes or the AI-driven swarm drones. His quantum comm buzzed with a message from Thompson. "They took the bait. Their initial report calls us charmingly obsolete." Davidson sent back a single emoji, a fox grinning at a henhouse. The Empire had come to teach humanity about warfare. They were about to learn why Earth's military history was filled with stories of overwhelming forces being defeated by what they dismissed as primitive tactics. The galaxy's greatest military power was about to discover that sometimes the best weapon isn't the most advanced. It's the most unexpected. "Let the games begin," Davidson muttered, and started making calls. Lieutenant James Maverick Cooper strapped himself into the cockpit of his F-300 and 2 space superiority fighter, a grin playing across his face. The Empire had demanded this first exercise take place in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, their way of showing off their superior navigation capabilities. Remember, primitive vessels. The Imperial combat instructor's voice dripped with condescension over the comms. This is a simple demonstration of proper void combat procedures. Follow our lead precisely. Cooper exchanged knowing looks with his wingman through the quantum video link. They'd spent the last week studying footage of Imperial ship movements. The aliens flew like computers, perfect, predictable, and utterly lacking in imagination. Maverick, you seeing what I'm seeing? His wingman, Lieutenant Maria Hex Rodriguez, asked privately. Oh yeah, Cooper replied, noting how the Imperial formation created regular geometric patterns. They're flying like it's a parade. Bet they've never heard of chaos theory. The exercise began with the Imperial ships demonstrating their superior combat maneuvers. Their vessels, each one larger than Earth's biggest carriers, moved in perfect synchronization. The display would have been impressive if it hadn't been so predictable. Now, the instructor announced, observe proper attack formation Alpha 7. Cooper cut his engines. The Imperial commander's voice crackled with static. Human vessel, you appear to be experiencing propulsion failure. Withdraw from the exercise area. Instead, Cooper let his ship drift toward a nearby asteroid cluster, looking for all the world like a disabled vessel. The Empire's formation continued their precise maneuvers, deliberately ignoring the primitive craft's mechanical failure. That's when Cooper struck. Using the asteroid's gravity and a barely visible puff from his maneuvering thrusters, his F-302 slingshot around the rocky mass. The maneuver, perfectly calculated to look like random tumbling, put him right in the blind spot of the Imperial formation. What is the meaning of this? The instructor demanded. Return to your designated position immediately. Cooper's response was to launch a simulated quantum torpedo, right into the perfect gap their mathematical formation had created. According to the combat computers, 3 Imperial ships had just been destroyed. That's impossible. The Imperial commander sputtered. You were disabled. Yeah, about that, Cooper replied, already moving to his next attack position. Quick question. Do you folks have any movies? You know, entertainment broadcasts. Because there's this great old film called The Hunt for Red October you really should watch. Hex took her cue. While the Imperial ships were focused on Cooper, she led her squadron through a series of maneuvers that would have made a World War I ace proud. The F-302s darted between asteroids, using the debris field like Pacific Islands in a massive, 3-dimensional game of naval warfare. The Imperial ships tried to adjust, but their responses were too perfect, too predictable. They couldn't comprehend why the human pilots weren't following proper combat algorithms. Every time they established a new formation, the Earth fighters would disrupt it in ways their combat computers insisted were tactically invalid. This is not proper combat protocol. The Imperial instructor insisted as another of his ships registered a fatal hit. You cannot simply ignore established void combat doctrine. Watch us, Cooper replied, leading his squadron into a maneuver that technically shouldn't have been possible according to Imperial calculations. The human ships spun through space like dancers, each movement unpredictable yet perfectly coordinated. The exercise ended with the Imperial fleet thoroughly destroyed, their perfect formations broken apart by what they dismissed as primitive tactics. As Cooper guided his fighter back to the carrier, he received a private message from Major Davidson. Nice work, Maverick. The Empire's War College is having a collective aneurysm, trying to figure out how you pulled that off. Apparently, they've never considered using asteroids as cover. Sir, Cooper replied, should we tell them about submarines? Let's save something for the next lesson. Besides, if they're this upset about space combat, wait until they see what we've got planned for the ground exercises. Cooper laughed. Teaching the galaxy's greatest military power how to really fight was turning out to be the most fun he'd had since flight school. Staff Sergeant Lisa Ghost Martins lay perfectly still in the Mogov Desert's pre-dawn darkness, her adaptive camouflage suit blending seamlessly with the rocky terrain. 50 meters away, an Imperial scout walker stomped past, its sensors sweeping the area with what the aliens had proudly called unbeatable detection technology. Primitive species, the Imperial ground commander's voice echoed through the valley. Observe proper infantry deployment. A column of power-armored alien troops marched in perfect formation, their weapons held at precisely the same angle, their footsteps falling in exact synchronization. Martinez tapped her throat mic twice. The signal. Across the valley, her Marines responded with 2 clicks. The Empire had chosen this simple terrain to demonstrate proper ground warfare. They hadn't bothered to check why humans had suggested this particular patch of desert. As you can see, the commander continued, our forces maintain optimal spacing and systematic sweep patterns. Your chaotic approach to ground combat is. The sentence was cut short by the sound of absolutely nothing happening. At least nothing the Imperial sensors could detect. But beneath the desert floor, through carefully concealed tunnels that had been part of this training ground since 1942, Martinez's team was moving into position. Sir, one of the Imperial officers reported, we're detecting minor seismic disturbances. Irrelevant, the commander dismissed. This is desert terrain. Minimal tactical significance. Martinez allowed herself a small smile. The Empire had studied Earth's modern military capabilities, but had apparently skipped over the part about desert warfare. They'd never heard of Rommel or Lawrence of Arabia, or the decades of combat experience that taught humans how to turn a desert into a weapon. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Imperial formation's right flank suddenly disappeared into a concealed pit, an old tank trap updated with modern materials to fool Imperial sensors. As the aliens tried to adjust their perfect formation, chaos erupted. Marines in adaptive camouflage seemed to materialize from the very ground. EMF pulses, carefully calibrated to the Empire's shield frequencies thanks to data gathered during the space exercises, disabled their impenetrable armor. The Imperials tried to establish a defensive position, but every textbook move they made had already been anticipated. Impossible. The commander shouted as another squad of his troops fell to simulated fire. You're not following any known combat doctrine. Yeah, Martins replied, triggering a series of sonic pulses that played havoc with the Imperial walker's gravity systems. That's kinduff the point. The aliens attempted to regroup using what they called Standard Counterinsurgency Protocol 7. Martinez's team had already prepared for that, setting up kill zones precisely where Imperial doctrine said they should establish rally points. Ghost, you seeing this? Corporal Chen's voice crackled over the secure comm. They keep trying the same maneuvers. It's like they've never heard of adapting to conditions. That's because they haven't, Martins responded, watching through her tactical display as another Imperial squad walked right into a prepared ambush zone. Their doctrine's been perfect for so long, they forgot how to improvise. The exercise ended after just 47 minutes. The entire Imperial demonstration force had been eliminated without suffering a single human casualty. The commander stood amid his defeated troops, his chromatic skin cycling through various shades of what humans had learned was embarrassment. This was not proper combat, he insisted. You used terrain features, concealment, irregular tactics. With respect, sir, Martins said, emerging from cover so perfectly matched to the desert stones that several Imperial troops flinched. That's exactly what proper combat is. The terrain is a weapon. Doctrine is a guideline, not a script. And the perfect plan. She gestured to the disabled Imperial walker now listing to one side, lasts exactly as long as first contact with the enemy. Later, during the debriefing, Major Davidson showed Martinez the classified reports. The Empire's military academics were in an uproar. Some were demanding immediate doctrine revision. Others insisted humanity must be cheating. A small but growing faction had begun secretly requesting access to Earth's military history archives. "Good work, Ghost," Davidson said. "Ready for tomorrow. They want to see our urban combat capabilities." Martinez grinned. "Think we should show them how we turn their own seismic sensors into a targeting network?" "Nah, save something for the final. Besides, wait until they learn about what Sergeant O'Connor has planned for their cyber warfare demonstration." Command Master Chief Brian, old school O'Connor, sat in the base cafeteria, deliberately choosing a table within earshot of a group of Imperial junior officers. He stirred his coffee slowly, watching their reflections in his tablet screen while making a show of reading military reports. "Did you hear about the human special forces?" One of the alien officers whispered, their universal translator barely picking up the words. "They say they can operate without any technological support at all." "Impossible," another replied, but O'Connor noted the slight color shift in their skin. "Uncertainty. Phase 1 of psychological warfare. Let the enemy create their own ghost stories." The past week had been a masterclass in what O'Connor liked to call head game warfare. After the embarrassing ground combat exercise, the Empire had insisted on demonstrating their automated combat systems, particularly their unhackable war droids. "Your species relies too heavily on individual initiative," the Imperial Combat Director had declared. "Observe the perfect synchronization of mechanical warfare." O'Connor had simply smiled and sent a single text message: "Showtime." The Empire's demonstration began impressively enough. Hundreds of combat droids moved with perfect precision, their targeting systems identifying and eliminating holographic threats with mechanical efficiency. Then things started going wrong. First, the droids began detecting phantom targets. Then their formation started shifting, almost imperceptibly at first. By the time the Imperial commanders realized something was wrong, their entire mechanical army had reorganized itself into a precise representation of human military formations. "This is impossible," the combat director had shouted. "Our systems cannot be compromised." O'Connor had stepped forward then, holding up an ancient iPhone 7. "Fun fact about humans, we've been hacking our own robots for longer than your empire has existed. By the way, your quantum encryption. It's adorable. We cracked it during first contact." Now, 3 days later, the psychological effects were showing. Imperial officers jumped at shadows. Their troops hesitated before following standard protocols. Every human victory had planted seeds of doubt in their perfectly ordered minds. "Sir," Lieutenant Park's voice came through O'Connor's earpiece. "You need to see this. We're picking up unauthorized access attempts to Earth's military history databases." "Source?" O'Connor asked, though he already knew. "Imperial junior officers. Lots of them. They're particularly interested in guerrilla warfare tactics and something called the art of war." O'Connor smiled. "Phase 2 complete. Make the enemy question their own doctrine." He stood up, deliberately dropping a worn copy of the Book of Five Rings near the Imperial officers' table. They stared at it like it might explode, which, given humanity's recent demonstrations, wasn't an unreasonable fear. An alert flashed across his tactical lens. The Empire's War College had just issued an emergency directive. All troops were to disregard primitive tactical theories and maintain strict adherence to Imperial doctrine. Perfect. Phase 3. Let the enemy's rigid hierarchy do our work for us. "Master Chief," Major Davidson's voice came through his secure comm. "How's the psychological offensive going?" O'Connor watched as one of the Imperial officers furtively picked up the book he'd dropped. "Let's just say their perfect military machine is showing some cracks, sir. Their junior officers are starting to think for themselves." "Good, because tomorrow they want to demonstrate their strategic AI systems. Apparently, they think removing human uncertainty from the equation will prove their superiority. They still don't get it, do they, sir?" O'Connor chuckled. "The uncertainty is the point." Later that evening, O'Connor reviewed the day's intelligence. Imperial communications showed a 300% increase in references to human military history. Their troops were beginning to ask questions about why certain protocols existed. Best of all, their combat simulations were showing decreased efficiency as soldiers hesitated to follow doctrine they now suspected might be flawed. Command Master Chief, his AI assistant chimed. Imperial High Command has just classified all information about Earth's military capabilities as Priority Alpha. O'Connor leaned back in his chair, satisfied. The Empire had come to teach humanity about warfare. Instead, they were learning the hardest military lesson of all. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the best technology. It's the one who makes you doubt everything you think you know. Admiral Kate Checkmate Anderson stood on the bridge of the U.S. Nimitz II, watching the largest military exercise in human history unfold across her tactical display. The Empire had finally lost patience with small-scale demonstrations and demanded a full battle simulation. Fleet versus fleet, army versus army. Let them reveal the true superiority of proper military doctrine, they said. They were about to learn why humanity never relied on a single doctrine. All commands, execute Operation Chaos Theory, Anderson ordered. Across the solar system, Earth's forces sprang into action, but not in any way the Empire expected. From the Kuiper Belt, converted mining ships launched clouds of metallic dust, creating sensor ghosts that played havoc with Imperial targeting systems. Near Venus, a squadron of F-302s began what looked like a retreating action, drawing the Empire's perfect formation into the planet's corrosive atmosphere. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, Imperial fleet is responding exactly as predicted. Their doctrine requires them to press any apparent advantage. Anderson nodded. Comments Phase 2. That's when humanity revealed their true capabilities. Quantum torpedoes, their signatures masked by the metallic dust, struck from impossible angles. Ships that the Empire had dismissed as primitive suddenly demonstrated technology that matched, and in some cases exceeded, their own. Impossible. The Imperial Fleet Commander's transmission crackled. Your vessels were rated as Class 3 technological level. Yeah, Anderson replied, watching as her forces executed maneuvers that combined centuries of naval warfare with bleeding-edge space combat theory. We figured you'd think that. Here's the thing about humans, we like keeping aces up our sleeves. On Mars, the ground war was going even worse for the Empire. Colonel Thompson's forces had turned the entire southern hemisphere into a massive trap. Imperial troops, following their standard protocols, walked right into kill zones the humans had prepared based on their predictable tactics. Ma'am, her communications officer called out, you need to see this. The Imperial Command Network. Anderson smiled. Right on schedule. While their forces had been focused on the visible battle, humanity's cyber warfare teams had been busy. Led by Captain Sarah Glitch O'Connor, they had turned the Empire's own battlefield AI against them. Imperial ships began receiving conflicting orders. Their perfect formations fell apart as some vessels followed original protocols, while others responded to phantom commands. Their much-vaunted strategic AI, designed to eliminate human uncertainty from warfare, had become their greatest vulnerability. All commands, execute final gamut, Anderson ordered. Across the solar system, humanity's forces seemed to simultaneously lose cohesion. Ships scattered, ground forces retreated in apparent disorder. The Empire, their tactical doctrine demanding they exploit such weakness, committed their reserves to a final push. That's when Anderson revealed her masterstroke. The retreating ships suddenly turned, their seemingly random movements forming a three-dimensional web that trapped the Imperial fleet. The scattered ground forces converged from multiple directions, their apparent chaos resolving into a perfectly coordinated attack. Check. Anderson transmitted on all frequencies. The Imperial forces found themselves caught in a trap centuries in the making. A combination of Hannibal's double envelopment at Cannae, Nelson's tactics at Trafalgar, and modern space combat theory that humanity had developed but never revealed. The Imperial commander's voice was barely controlled. This is not warfare. This is humanity. Anderson replied. We learned warfare the hard way, through millions of casualties, countless defeats, and painful lessons. Your empire learned war through simulation and theory. We learned it through blood and fire. The exercise ended with the Imperial forces suffering 89% simulated casualties. Humanity had lost less than 20% of their forces. Later, in her ready room, Anderson reviewed the after-action reports with Major Davidson and the other command staff. They're requesting access to our military academies, Davidson reported. Seems the Empire's younger officers are staging something of a revolt against traditional doctrine. Anderson smiled, remembering her own days as a junior officer challenging conventional wisdom. Give them access, but remind them, the most important lesson of human military history isn't any particular tactic or strategy. Oh, Davidson raised an eyebrow. It's that the moment you think you've mastered warfare, you've already lost the next war. Captain Robert Bobby Jackson checked his watch again, then scanned the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Fort Bragg. The message he'd received had been coded using an old World War II cipher, something no eye would think to check. At precisely 300, 5 figures materialized from a quantum transport beam. Password? Jackson asked casually, his hand resting near his sidearm. Thermopylae. The lead figure responded. Junior Imperial Officer Telkar removed his stealth cloak, followed by 4 others. Their chromatic skin showed bands of nervous color patterns. We wish to learn. Jackson nodded. This was the 3rd group this week. Ever since the Solar System War Games, more and more young Imperial officers had been making contact, seeking something their own military couldn't provide: the human perspective on warfare. First lesson, Jackson said, leading them to a makeshift classroom. Why did you choose this location for our meeting? Telkar looked confused. It was in your instructions. Yes, but why here? Think tactically. The Imperial officers glanced around. One of them, his rank insignia marking him as a combat engineer, spoke up. Multiple exits, structural interference with scanning technologies, nearby terrain features that could provide cover if needed. Jackson smiled. You're learning already. Your superiors would have chosen a secure facility with one entrance, perfect sight lines, and no electronic interference. Tactically perfect, and therefore perfectly predictable. He activated a holographic display showing various Earth military engagements throughout history. The Imperial officers leaned forward, their skin patterns showing intense interest. What you're about to see isn't in any Imperial database, Jackson explained. We're talking Vietnam, Afghanistan, centuries of asymmetric warfare. Situations where the technologically superior force didn't always win. This is heresy, one of the younger officers whispered, but his color patterns showed fascination rather than disgust. Over the next few hours, Jackson showed them how smaller forces had defeated larger ones, how terrain could nullify technological advantages, and most importantly, how to think beyond doctrine. Sir, Telkar asked during a break, why does your species intentionally study its failures? Our historical records only show victories. Jackson pulled up footage from the Battle of Little Bighorn. Because failure is the best teacher. Every defeat taught us something. Every loss made us adapt. Your empire's perfect record. That's your biggest weakness. The session was interrupted by an urgent alert on Jackson's quantum comm. Imperial High Command had launched a surprise inspection of all officer quarters. His student's absence would be discovered soon. Time for your second lesson, Jackson said calmly. Improvisation. What followed was a masterclass in evasion tactics. Using maintenance tunnels, sensor dead zones, and precisely timed electromagnetic pulses, Jackson helped the Imperial officers return to their quarters undetected. They made it with seconds to spare. Remember, he transmitted on a frequency they'd never think to monitor. Old-fashioned radio. Victory doesn't always mean defeating the enemy. Sometimes it means making sure they never knew you were there. Later that night, Jackson met with Colonel Thompson in a secure briefing room. "How are our students progressing?" she asked, reviewing the encrypted reports. "Faster than expected," Jackson replied. "They're starting to question everything." Yesterday, one of them asked why Imperial ships still use rigid formation patterns when spatial dynamics allow for three-dimensional maneuvers. Thompson smiled. "And the surveillance feeds we accidentally let them discover. They're spreading through the Imperial fleet like wildfire. Junior officers are secretly watching Earth's military history documentaries. Some have even started running unauthorized combat simulations using human tactics." Perfect. Thompson pulled up a classified intelligence report. Imperial High Command is in chaos. Their perfect military machine is starting to show cracks. Their younger officers are questioning orders, adapting tactics on the fly, even studying Earth's most devastating defeats to learn from them. Jackson grinned. "Ma'am, are we creating a revolution?" "Better," Thompson replied. "We're creating something the Empire has never faced before. Soldiers who think for themselves." As if to prove her point, Jackson's quantum comm chirped with another coded message. More Imperial officers requesting lessons. The revolution wasn't being fought with weapons or ships, but with something far more powerful: ideas. The Empire had come to teach humanity about warfare. Instead, they were learning that their greatest enemy wasn't Earth's weapons or tactics. It was their own rigid thinking. General Ashley "Ash" Blackwood stood before the combined Earth-Empire military coalition, the massive amphitheater filled with beings from two vastly different military traditions. The tension in the room was palpable. Just 3 months ago, this meeting would have been unthinkable. "The Empire came to Earth to teach us proper warfare," she began, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. "Instead, we all learned something far more valuable. There is no such thing as proper warfare." The holoscreen behind her displayed footage from their various exercises. Imperial ships in perfect formation being outmaneuvered by seemingly chaotic human tactics, ground forces adapting to impossible situations, and younger officers from both sides working together to create something entirely new. Yesterday, the Imperial War College formally requested the establishment of a permanent joint military academy on Earth. Blackwood continued. "Some have asked why the galaxy's most advanced military power would want to learn from us primitives." She gestured, and the display showed a new image: an Imperial destroyer executing a maneuver that combined their advanced technology with Earth naval tactics from the Age of Sail. "Because we understand something that can't be computed, programmed, or reduced to doctrine. We understand chaos." The Imperial High Command representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but their discomfort was offset by the eager attention of their younger officers, many of whom had been part of the secret learning sessions. "The new Terran combat doctrine isn't really a doctrine at all," Blackwood explained. "It's a philosophy. Never stop learning. Never stop adapting. And most importantly, never believe you've mastered warfare, because warfare itself is always evolving." She nodded to Captain Telkar, who had risen from secret student to official liaison between Earth and Imperial forces. He stepped forward, his chromatic skin showing patterns of pride and determination. 3 days ago, Telkar announced, an Imperial patrol encountered a previously unknown hostile species in the Carina sector. Following standard doctrine, they should have retreated to await reinforcements. Instead, the patrol commander remembered her Earth training. The display showed footage of the encounter. The Imperial ships moved with their old precision, but now that precision was tempered with creativity. They used local stellar phenomena in ways that would have been tactically invalid under old doctrine. They adapted their perfect formations into fluid patterns that confused and overwhelmed the enemy. The patrol not only survived, Telkar continued, they achieved victory without casualties, using what humans would call thinking outside the box. Blackwood resumed her position at the podium. "This is why we're establishing the Joint Academy. Not to teach perfect doctrine, but to teach perfect adaptability. Every military failure in human history will be studied alongside every imperial victory. Because true military excellence isn't about being perfect, it's about being unpredictable. The audience erupted in discussion. Imperial officers who had once dismissed human warfare as primitive were now eagerly comparing notes with Earth commanders. Battle computers were being reprogrammed to incorporate random variables and creative solutions. Later, in her office, Blackwood met with the original team that had orchestrated Earth's education of the Empire. "Well," Major Davidson said, "I guess the student has become the master, and the master has become the student." "No," Blackwood corrected, examining a proposal for joint human Imperial Special Forces training. "We've all become students. That's the point." Speaking of students, Colonel Thompson added, "The first official class at the Joint Academy starts next week. 2,000 Imperial officers signed up in the first hour." "And the curriculum?" Blackwood asked. "Everything from ancient Earth warfare to modern space combat. They'll study Sun Tzu alongside Imperial fleet tactics, learn about guerrilla warfare and quantum combat systems, but most importantly, they'll learn to think for themselves," Blackwood finished. Outside her window, an Imperial destroyer executed a perfect barrel roll, a maneuver that would have been considered insane under their old doctrine. On the parade ground below, human Marines were teaching Imperial troops about urban combat, while Imperial engineers demonstrated advanced shield technologies. The Empire had come to teach humanity about warfare. Instead, they'd all learned the greatest military lesson of all. The moment you think you have nothing left to learn is the moment you've already lost. And somewhere in the galaxy, potential adversaries were about to discover just how dangerous a military could be when it combined Imperial technology and precision with humanity's chaos and creativity. The real lessons were just beginning.